Have you ever found yourself maybe late at night just endlessly scrolling and wondering, what is actually going on in my head right now? Well, today we are unlocking the psychology of your digital brain. Let's dive in.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Is it all just random clicking and tapping? Or could there be a whole set of psychological models that explain pretty much everything you do online? Well, spoiler alert, there are. And that's what we're going to get into today.
So we're going to peel this whole topic back like an onion. We'll start with the big why, our core motivations for even being online, then we'll dig into how we get so hooked. After that, we'll look at your brain's juggling act. And finally, we'll get to the core, how we decide what to believe.
All right, first up, let's tackle the most fundamental question of all. Why are we even here? What's the real reason we spend so much of our lives online? Well, according to something called the uses and gratifications theory, it turns out our online time isn't just a mindless habit. Nope, it's actually goal-driven. Every time you log on, you're subconsciously trying to satisfy a core human need.
So, what kind of needs are we talking about? Well, think about it. There's the huge need for belonging. You know, that amazing feeling when you find your people in an online group or community. And then there's self-presentation. The way we carefully curate our profiles to show the world exactly who we are, or maybe who we want to be.
Okay, but that brings up a really interesting question. What happens when all that self-presentation gets stripped away? What happens when you're not you, you're just an anonymous username in a giant form? This is where a pretty cool idea called the social identity model of de-individuation effects, or SIDE, comes into play. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know, but the idea is actually simple. When you're anonymous, your personal, individual identity kind of fades into the background. And what comes forward? Your social or group identity. You're not just Jane or John Doe anymore, you're a hardcore fan of that team, and you start acting like one.
So we go online to meet our needs. Got it. But we all know there's something else going on, right? What is it that makes us completely lose track of time? Let's get into the science of digital immersion. You ever been so deep in a video game that the real world just disappears? Hours fly by. That's a real psychological state, and it's called flow. It's this feeling of complete absorption, and it is a massive reason why digital experiences are so incredibly compelling. But there's another powerful force keeping us glued to our screens. As the psychologist Fritz Heider once said, we're all basically amateur detectives. We're wired with this deep, deep need to understand why people do the things they do.
And this is known as the naive psychologist theory. It's this idea that deep down, we're all trying to figure each other out. And social media, it's the perfect playground for that. Every post, every photo, every comment is another clue. This drive to understand is a powerful, powerful engine that keeps us engaged and scrolling.
Okay, so we're hooked, we're in a state of flow, and we're playing detective. But there's a cost to all this, isn't there? Let's pull back another layer and see what's actually happening inside our brains when we try to do it all at once.
So a great way to think about your brain comes from cognitive psychology. It's this idea of the brain as a kind of computer, an information processing machine. We're not just passively watching our screens. Our brains are actively working, processing everything we see.
And it happens in a pretty basic three-step loop. There's the input, which is all the stuff coming in from our screens. Then there's the process, where our brain does its thing. And finally, there's the output. A click, a like, a comment, you name it.
But, and this is a huge but, unlike a supercomputer, our brains don't have unlimited power. Our cognitive resources are finite. They can and do run out. And this is where our modern digital lives get, well, complicated.
This is all explained by what are called limited resource capacity models. It's really just a fancy way of saying something you've definitely felt before. When you try to do too much at once, you're on a Zoom call, answering an email, and checking a notification, your brain just gets overloaded, and your performance on everything tanks.
And that mental cost, that little stutter when you switch tasks, it has a name. It's called resumption lag. It's that tiny delay where your brain has to ask, okay, wait, where was I? And while each lag is small, they add up, making us way less efficient and a lot more likely to make mistakes.
All right, we've made it to the very center of the onion. We know why we're online, what keeps us hooked, and how our brains are struggling to keep up. So for the final piece of the puzzle, in this absolute chaos of information, how do we decide what's real and what's not?
To cope with the flood of information, our brains basically have two gears. There's systematic processing. That's when we slow down, do our homework, and really analyze something. But let's be real, we can't do that for everything.
So most of the time, we're in heuristic processing mode, using mental shortcuts to make snap judgments.
So how do these shortcuts work when we're trying to figure out if we can trust something online? Well, Fogg's prominence interpretation theory breaks it down into a super fast two-step process. First, prominence, what catches your eye? A flashy headline? A slick design? And second, interpretation. What's your immediate gut reaction to it? It all happens in a flash.
And here is the absolute key to all of this. Technology isn't neutral. The way a website or an app is designed is specifically meant to trigger these shortcuts and guide our gut feelings, whether we realize it or not.
Sundar's main model shows this perfectly. The modality, like a video, triggers a realism heuristic. It just feels more true. The agency, like a government website, triggers an authority heuristic. We just assume it's credible. Even things like interactivity and simple navigatability have their own built-in shortcuts that shape what we believe.
So let's do a quick flyby. We log on to fulfill deep human needs. We get hooked by states of flow and our own curiosity. Our brains struggle to keep up with multitasking because they have limited power. And to survive, we rely on quick mental shortcuts that are often triggered by the very design of the tech we use.
I know, that was a lot. But now you kind of have the blueprint. You have a new lens to understand your own online behavior. So I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you've seen the hidden architecture of your digital brain, which one of these ideas is going to change how you look at your screen tomorrow?